In this tutorial, you will learn how to work with measurements and how to create dynamically linked captions. First, you'll measure the side lengths and angles in a triangle. Next, you'll use Sketchpad's calculator to look for patterns in these measurements. Finally, you'll link measurements and labels in your caption to the objects they describe in your sketch using a feature of Sketchpad called hot text. To begin my investigation, I'm going to construct a triangle using the segment tool. I'll use the text tool to label the triangle's vertices. I'll continue by measuring the three sides of the triangle. First, I'll choose the arrow tool, and then I'll select the three sides. I'll go to the Measure menu and choose Measure Lengths. All three lengths appear. If I drag a vertex of my triangle, the lengths are updated dynamically as the triangle changes. I'll continue by measuring the three angles of my triangle. To measure an angle, I'll press, hold, and drag to form a selection rectangle around a vertex, in this case, point A. I now have point A selected, as well as the two sides that form the angle. I'll go to Measure and choose Angle, and the angle measurement appears. Now let's continue with angle B. It's very important to make sure you've selected the correct objects in order to measure an angle. If I click, for instance, just on point B and go to Measure, Angle is grayed out. I cannot measure the angle. That's because a single point doesn't determine an angle. So I'll go and select, as well as point B, the two sides that determine the angle. Now I'll go back to Measure and I can choose Angle. Finally, I'll measure angle C. I'll draw a selection rectangle around the point and the two sides and choose Measure Angle. When I drag now the triangle, the three angles are updated dynamically. This gives me a way to drag the triangle and look to see what patterns exist in the measurements. I'm going to use Sketchpad's calculator to compute the sum of two lengths of triangle ABC. I'll choose Number, Calculate, and Sketchpad's calculator appears. With most calculators, you have to type numbers to enter them into an equation. Sketchpad, however, provides a more powerful way to enter measurements into a calculation. To compute the sum of the lengths of CA and AB, I'll move on to my sketch, and I'll click directly on the measurement of segment CA. When I do, it's inputted into my calculation. I'll now click the plus key, and I'll move back into my sketch, and I'll click on the measurement of length AB. I'll finish by clicking OK. Notice now that the sum of the lengths of CA and AB appears in my sketch. Watch what happens when I drag a vertex of my triangle. Not only does Sketchpad update the lengths of the sides, it also updates the sum of the lengths. One thing I might look at, for instance, is how the sum of the lengths of CA and AB compare to the length of the third side of the triangle, BC. I can also use Sketchpad to compute the sum of the angle measures of the triangle. I'll choose Number, Calculate, and again click directly on the angle measures. I see that for this particular triangle, the sum is 180 degrees. I'll drag a vertex of the triangle to see what happens when I change the angles of the triangle. Notice that their sum remains 180. Now that I have a conjecture about triangle ABC, I'd like to write that conjecture in my sketch. I'll start by doing a little preparation. I'll choose the marker tool from the toolbox, move directly over point A, and click and drag into the angle to form an angle marker. I'll do the same with angle B, clicking on its vertex and dragging into the angle, and finally the same with vertex C. I now have 3 angle markers with 1 stroke each. I'd like to indicate, however, that these 3 angles are not necessarily congruent. So using my marker tool, I'll move directly onto my angle marker for angle B and click again to add a second stroke, and then move over here to angle C and click 2 times to form 3 strokes. I can also change the color of an angle marker. If I choose the arrow tool and select an angle marker, I can go to the display menu and pick a different color. So now I'm ready to write a conjecture, this conjecture about the sum of the angle measurements of my triangle. I'll choose the text tool and click and drag an empty space to form a selection rectangle. Now I can type. I'll say the sum of, and now I'd like to say angle BAC, and rather than type that, there actually is an easier way. I'm going to move directly over the angle marker for angle BAC, and notice when I do, a plus sign appears. That means I can click to add that name of the angle marker to my caption. Watch what happens. Angle BAC is added to my caption. This is a feature of Sketchpad that we call hot text. Let's continue. The sum of BAC, and now I'd like to say angle CBA. So as before, I'll move directly over the angle marker for angle CBA and click, and whoosh, that's added to my text. And let's see, my final angle will be ACB. So I'll move over the angle marker and click. So the sum of those 3 angles is 180 degrees. Okay, so there's my caption. If I now go and choose my arrow tool, and I move directly over one of those angles that I added as hot text, notice that the angle lights up both here in the text and simultaneously on my triangle. In fact, if I click on the angle name, its angle marker lights up. And the same is true with the other 2 angle names too. So hot text is a convenient way to link the text in your captions to the objects to which they refer in your diagrams. Now that I've written a conjecture, I'd like to prove why it's true. Sketchpad can help with the proof. To start, I'm going to construct a line through point A that's parallel to segment BC. I'll select the point and the segment and choose Construct Parallel Line. If I now drag point C, the line moves, but it continues to pass through point A and be parallel to BC. To continue, I'm going to construct 2 new angle markers. I'll choose the marker tool and click on point A and drag, and click on point A and drag again. Now I have 3 angle markers formed around point A. I'll select the 2 new angle markers that I've just made, and I'll choose Measure, Angles. If I look at these angle measurements and compare them to the angle measurements I already have, I see that certain angles appear to be congruent. Let's see if those relationships continue to hold when I drag a vertex of my triangle. All of the angle measurements change, but again, I see that certain angles are congruent to other angles. I can indicate this in my diagram by changing the number of strokes on my angle markers. Now the information that I see here in my angle measurements is conveyed in my geometric illustration. Well, the rest I'll leave up to you. Use the text tool to type your proof explaining why the sum of the angle measures of triangle ABC is always 180 degrees. As before, you might find it helpful to use hot text when writing your explanation.